Welcome to Can Do Math. I'm Maria McGuire. This problem says, a toy rocket is launched from the rooftop of the building. The rocket's height, h of t, is modeled by the equation h of t equals -16t squared plus 80t plus 96 after t seconds. So, the first thing you might be confused about is how I pronounce the beginning of the equation. It looks like it says h times t, but it actually does not mean h times t. This is a function, and this is the language of a function, and it's pronounced h of t. What you normally see is f of x. So h of t is sort of like saying y. Okay, and this is a four-part question. So the first part, number one, says how tall is the building? Number one, how tall is the building? So let's write out the equation. H of t equals -16t squared plus 80t plus 96. Okay, so let's think about what the word problem is saying. So picture yourself with the rocket on the top of a building. And one variable is time, measured by seconds, and then the dependent variable is the height of the rocket. So number one is asking us how tall the building is. And this one is actually really easy because when we think about t, the number of seconds, let's say that we set t to 0, so 0 seconds. H of t, let's make t 0. So that's the moment immediately before you launch your rocket. So -16 times 0 squared plus 80 times 0 plus 96. So when t is 0, the height of the rocket is, this all cancels out, and the height of the rocket is 96. And later it tells us that it's feet. Okay, so think about that. Right at the moment, right before you launch your rocket, the height of the rocket is 96 feet. Now, your rocket is going to be right on top of the building, so that tells us that the building is 96 feet tall. Okay, so that's an answer to number one. Number two says, how long, number two, how long before the rocket hits the ground at the base of the building? Okay, so let's write out our equation again. H of t equals -16t squared plus 80t plus 96. Now let's think about the question. How long before the rocket hits the ground at the base of the building? Okay, so what do we know? We know that if it hits the ground, then the height of the rocket is going to be 0. So when the height is 0, what is t? So 0 equals, same thing, -16t squared plus 80t plus 96. Okay, so now all we do is solve for t. So in order to make this problem simpler, we are going to divide everything by -16. So I'm going to go divided by -16, divided by -16, and divided by -16. So same equation, just a lot easier to solve. So 0 equals, and these cancel out, so that gives us t squared. And then this is a positive divided by a negative, so that's going to be minus. So what is 80 minus 80 divided by -16? That is going to be 5t. And then a positive divided by a negative, that's going to be a negative. What is 96 divided by 16? And that is 6. Okay, so now this problem is a lot simpler. Still solving for t. So let's solve it by factoring. T. And so at this point, it's just a question of trial and error. We might have to try out a bunch of different ways to put the numbers in parentheses. And then what we're going to do is use FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, in order to find what works. So let's try t plus 1 and t minus 6. So we're going to first, outer, inner, last, just to test, make sure that works. Equals t squared. So first, t times t is t squared, and then outer. So t times the -6 is minus 6t. Inner, 1 times t, plus 1, and then last, 1 times 6 is -6. Whoops, this is a t, 1t. Combine like terms, we have t squared minus 6t plus t is minus 5t, and then minus 6. So t squared minus 5t minus 6, that is indeed the same thing. So we are one step away from solving number 2 of this problem. And in order to find out the answer, click on the link below this video in order to become a member of candomath.com. Let's go to number 3. Number 3 of this problem says, how high will the rocket be 5 seconds after takeoff? Okay, number 3. Let's write out our equation again. H of t equals -16t squared plus 80t plus 96. Okay. How high will the rocket be 5 seconds after takeoff? So 5 seconds after takeoff, that tells us that t equals 5. So all we got to do is plug in 5 for t. So h of 5 equals -16 times 5 squared plus 80 times 5 plus 96. And this gives us -16 times 25 plus 80 times 5 is 400 plus 96. Okay, and so for the last two steps of this problem, click on the link before the video in order to become a member of Can Do Math so you can see the answer to, so you can see the last step of number 3. All right, and the final part of this question, number 4, says, at what time will the rocket be 160 feet above the ground? Number 4. So let's write out our equation again. H of t equals negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 96. So the question again is, at what time will the rocket be 150 feet above the ground? Oh, sorry, 160 feet, it says. Okay, so that means h of t is going to be 160. The height is 160, so we know that. Now all we gotta do is solve for t. So negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 96. Let's simplify this equation by dividing everything by negative 16. Negative 16 divided by negative 16 divided by negative 16 divided by negative 16. All right. This is going to give us negative 10 equals t squared, because these two cancel out. And 80 divided by 16 is 5, and so we need a negative 5 t, because it's a positive over a negative. Here's another positive divided by a negative, so it's going to be negative 96 divided by 16. What is that? Six. Okay, 96 divided by 16 is 6. Okay, now let's move the negative 10 over to this side of the equation so that we can get a 0 on this side of the equation. So negative 10 plus 10, so we're going to go plus 10 plus 10. That's going to give us 0 equals t squared minus 5t minus 6 plus 10 is plus 4. Okay, and let's solve by factoring. 0 equals, remember, use first, outer, inner, last. This is going to give us 2 possible answers and only one can be correct. So t, and in order to see the final step of this problem, click on the link below in order to become a member of candomath.com. I am Maria McGuire. Thanks for watching.